So I did a video yesterday talking about how just dire straits British boxing is. It got a lot of correspondence. Now, this channel kind of struggles really for interaction. And it was a video that, although it didn't get massive amounts, it definitely got mixed emotions in the comments section. And I was talking about basically boxing just being absolute dead. Not what it once was. And I started mentioning a lot of figures, these proper boxing people, proper boxing men. And do you know what? Afterwards, there was a lot I forgot. You know, like Terry Lawless, George Francis. Oh, if I sat about it, I could think. Basically, that's what boxing's missing. Proper boxing men. You know, I talked about Mickey Duff yesterday, and he said in his book, "I don't have any other interests in other than boxing." He talks in his biography, even when he's in the bath, he just he can't switch off, and he's matchmaking non-stop. And you know, you've seen these days. Barry Hearn was into his snooker, into his darts as well. Frank Warren, staunch Arsenal supporter, but this year he actually even tried to buy Tottenham, of all clubs. But Duff and, you know, your likes of them proper people, we're all just about the noble art. These days, a lot of them are into, you know, they'll be boxing coaches, but they'll train MMA fighters. And I remember asking John Gardner a couple of years ago. I said, John, what was a camp back in your day, in your era of excuse me, just walk on, of the late 70s to the early 80s, which is, I think that was the most successful, most thriving time British boxing ever. You know, that was a time when your Jim Watts and your Hagler came over to fight Minter, and the Vita and the Fermo fight, and so he said to me, he said, you know what, these days it's all like 12 weeks, and fighters will fight twice a year, and that's, some of them fight once a year. But back in that time, the golden era, if you like, they fought a camp, a full camp for a big British, Commonwealth, European fight was 6 weeks. And I've acquired 35 boxing users upstairs, and they're all from the late 70s to the early 80s. And I had a look the other week, obviously for research of the book, and I opened it up, and Mickey Duff was there, an advertisement for one of his shows at Wembley. And then I turned the page, and it was like Boza Edwards, Dennis Andrews, just it was literally every article for about 7 pages. If it wasn't Mickey Duff, it was Mickey Duff fighters. So that's how influential, that's how much of a stronghold he had over British boxing. And I think that was why it was such a healthy, that's why it was just such a much, you know, these days, Eddie, you know, it's all a huge franchise. You know, back in that era, Mickey Duff, Jarvis Astaire was in the background. Mike Barrett he had the Royal Albert Hall. Mickey, of course, had Wembley. But really, you had to get to Eileen, who was his secretary, before you got to Mickey. But these days, you know, Eddie Hearn will probably have 10, 12 men around him. And I know that because I looked at his website the other day, and I looked at all your Frank Smiths and the graphic designers of Matchroom and all this various different people and roles. You know, Frank Warren has it the same. I've been talking to some of his secretaries last couple of weeks because I've got to meet him for the Mickey Duff book. I was supposed to meet him in April, so I've been speaking to his secretaries, Rachel and Emma. But it was easy accessible. And Nick Manners said to me the other month, he said, you know what? He said he'd be turning up at venues, say at Liverpool and all that, and, you know, considering it was a rowdy, hostile environment of boozy fans. These days, with boxing promoters, they've all got bodyguards around them and what they're called, them big burly guys. Dominic Negus used to do it. There's a security company called Top Show or something like that. I can't remember. Someone tell me in the comments. It's always the same security company that kind of look after the big fights. He said back in that era, he said it was just Mickey Duff and he was just fearless. Of course, society's changed. It's a lot more dangerous. But that's why I believe boxing was far more healthier. Was basically, there was none of these agents and all this. It was just, you know, it was a boxer, a promoter, which 99 times out of 100 it was Mickey Duff. And if you didn't like it, then you just didn't fight, particularly in down south. Or if there was a manager, it was a Tommy Miller, or it was a Brendan Ingle, or it was a Terry Lawless. It was part of the cartel anyway, and everyone was easy. It was easy to deal with people. And yeah, boxing is it's not the same anymore. I mean, as I said, I wasn't even about then, but I do enjoy watching all the old footage. You know, even when I started getting into boxing in 1990, 91, 92, I had this golden era, if you like, and even though Sky Sports was just coming into it, it was constantly on Eurosport with Steve Holdsworth, or it was on Screen Sport. Back then, Matchroom were very influential. They had like Herbie Hyde, Eamon Loughran, Chris Eubank, your Sam Stories, obviously Barney Eastwood. McGuigan had gone by then, but your Bomber Graham was still about, and obviously Bruno was coming through the ranks, and that was one of the things John L. Gardner said to me. He said, you know, I was the best thing since sliced bread. And then all of a sudden, when John, just trying to think, so he obviously flogged Sykes 79, Flavour of the Month 80, 81, I think he fought Noel Quarus 82, 83. But he said, I was quite aware that even though I was still quite a young man, there was a young Franklin Roy Bruno coming through, and your Terry Lawlesses, your Mickey Duffs, they were all had one eye on. Do you know what I mean? They'd lost. John L. Gardner wasn't an old man by any means at that point. Yeah, he would have only maybe been 29, 30. But of course, Frank Bruno just won the ABAs as an 18-year-old, and promoters, which I mean, let's be honest. When you think of a boxing promoter, you think of some kind of sinister crook, like this kind of Fagin-esque figure who exploits young boys, and you know, he kind of revels in this seedy world of late night boxing. That's what a lot of people will think about boxing promoters. And it's not, you know, there's been some really, really good, solid promoters. And I tell you what, when I released this book, now the world have this concept of Mickey Duff being this, you know, you've heard the stories of Don King and Tim Witherspoon, and Larry Holmes as well, said the reason he has the hair like he does, it's to hide the devil horns. Now, I've delved and dug and scratched my way and heard all them stories, and but I've also heard the other side, and I've heard your Billy Swears side, and your Jim Watt side, and your Barry McGuigan side, and your Duke Mackenzie's and so on. I'm not going to tell you everyone who's in the book because there's at least 40 people, but they said the very opposite. So it's going to be interesting. But let us know your thoughts. I personally think boxing. I'm going to be honest. I stopped watching boxing probably 5 years ago. Every now and again, once or twice a year, there's a British title or a good domestic matchup that I will get excited about. But I've lost the love in it. I really have, and I just can't see it coming back. And I've had one or two comments go, "Oh, no, boxing's this, it's coming at the Saudis, bollocks." That is, even back to like 2012, and that the lightweight division, your Derry Matthews, your Gary Sykes, your Kevin Mitchells, your Gary Bucklands, your Stephen Smiths, there was just this kind of, and you know what? None of them fighters really even fought each other. It was a bit like years ago when you had Richard Williams, Anthony Farnell, Wayne Alexander. All the matches, they never really came off. And it was the same with the heavyweight division a couple of years back. Tyson Fury should have fought David Price, but give his British title up instead of getting revenge over the one guy who actually, I think he did lose a handful of fights in the amateurs. I'm doing Junior Witter's book this year, and that is amazing, really. And you kind of do, you've almost got to pinch yourself and think, how did that fight never take place? And people go, "Oh, well, Junior Witter never had anything to offer Hatton." Hang on. So when Ricky was down and out on the WBO, which is really northern area level, central area level, southern area level, it's not even English title level. Junior had cleaned up British, Commonwealth, European, and give up his British title rather than fight Ricky. Sorry, Junior. Junior took a step back. It's all in the book, and basically said, Brendan Ingle put John Thaxton in with Ricky, and he did that to use it as a yardstick. And obviously, John Thaxton lost to Ricky Hatton. Hatton won. The right winner did win, but basically, I'll tell you something as well. Junior Witter was a favourite with the bookies then, and sorry. So anyway, Hatton beat Thaxton and then gave up his title and went a different way for a couple of years. But for those who really know boxing, Ricky held the IBF, the WBA. He didn't hold the WBC, which is the World Boxing Council. So that's the Muhammad Ali belt. That's the best out of the 4 governing bodies. That's the one Mayweather always held. It's the one Canelo held. Mickey Duff always wanted his fighters to have that. Henry Wharton said to me, he said, "Mickey, can't I go for an IBO? Sorry, a WBO or a WBA or an IBF. No, listen, shush. Listen, Henry, I'll buy you one of them. Because back then, the WBO was just coming through. Was not really recognised. So in any era, I'm just trying to think. So Ali had that belt in the 70s. So it's at 50 years. The WBC has always been the number one body. Obviously, it was the guy at the top was Joe Sullivan, who's no longer here. But Duff really carried some weight with that governing body. And Hatton, I do not buy into, why would Ricky Hatton not want to win the WBC title? Just doesn't make sense. And the real hardcore fans, the anoraks, the absolute train spotters, the geeks, like I used to be, you'll understand what I'm saying. But I can't even remember the point of this. So yeah, boxing is it's not like it used to be, and I don't see it getting back to how it used to be anytime soon. If I'm studying boxing or I watch boxing, it's boxing from at least 15 years ago. This era, this day and age, this generation does not interest me. And I'm not surprised MMA is flourishing and coming through. I really, really have tried to get my son into boxing. Believe me, I have. And he's not interested because he's obsessed with MMA. Now, I've got about as much interest in MMA as I have with cricket or American football. I don't know anything other than I'm quite friendly with Alex Reid, who was an MMA fighter. And I've actually said to Alex before, and I've really annoyed him. I've sat and had a drink with him. And I said, oh, I've actually called it nonsense. And he went, Jamie, stop. He said, it's not nonsense. And I could tell he was a bit pissed off with me. But it is. You know, boxing is the purest form of art. It's not about being a Neanderthal. It's not about being macho. It's not about being a tough guy. It's about being smart and outsmarting your opponent, outthink. It's a game of chess. It's the most noble art of all. And yeah, you know, when I was a kid around boxing gyms, what I realised, you don't have to be a good fighter to be a good boxer. I know, I'm not going to name him, but there was one or two in Middlesbrough. There's this kid in Middlesbrough who actually went pro, and he's never had a fight in his life. And if someone had to put it on in the street, he would have probably run away. But he probably, you know, he would have hit you 6 before you got your hands out your pockets. And he just never had that bit of nastiness in him. But it's a skill, it's a craft, it's beautiful to watch. It really, when you watch two boxers, you know, thinking and using feints and blocking and parrying and slipping and sliding, and it's magical. It really is, or it used to be. Yeah, I just don't get that anymore. And yeah. When I've got the likes of Colin Hart and Kelly Maloney. Kelly Maloney was said to me, do you know what, Jamie? I'd love to do a book called The Changing Faces of Boxing. So obviously, Frank Maloney was got involved with boxing in the 80s, 90s. You know, he dealt, obviously Kelly now. Back in that day, you know, Frank dealt with your Don Kings and she said to me, I would have loved to have been a fly in the wall when Mickey Duff and Don King were negotiating. She said that would have been some experience. And yeah, it's just dead. It's just all about YouTubers and who can make the most money. And I did a video yesterday talking about Tom and Fury. He's a really nice lad. I don't know him. I've actually met him. I met him once, so I was helping with a gym, 2008. And Shane Fury boxed, and there was a load of travellers come in, and John Fury was there, and Tommy Fury he must have only been it was about 15 years, 16 years ago. He must have only been about 9 or 10. And you can't blame him for that, do you know what I mean? But it's very unfair on the old fighters who do it the old school way, the old fashioned way, you know, you win a Masters, win an area title, win an English title, the British, the Commonwealth, the European, the Intercontinental, the silver titles, as I said, these titles that you can win playing snakes and ladders. But each level is supposed to progress a fighter, and boxing's all about timing. I have been quite familiar with Gary Sykes for the last, I don't know, maybe 15 years. And he fought Liam Walsh at the end of his career and got well beat. But there was a time when Liam Walsh didn't want anything to do with that Gary Sykes fight. But at the end, when Gary Sykes was shot to bits, they took it. So boxing's all about timing. And it's all about, and that's why Mickey Duff was so great, it's all about knowing your fighters and getting that right opportunity. And, you know, Customato said Mickey Duff was the greatest matchmaker of all time. And you've only got to look at Frank Bruno's career coming through. He had some woeful opponents. He had some shockers. I'm talking about like ones that went over literally after about 3 punches. Some of them early fights were criminal. You know, but he knew how to keep the home fighter winning. He knew how to keep a fighter on the up, gradually coming through. And there was nobody better. But yeah, 21 minutes, I can't have talk. And I'm not going grey. I've got a dodgy beard, but I've touched the greys up, so I'm quite happy about that. But let us know your thoughts. British boxing, pugilism, you know, a game that people say Britain is the home of boxing. Technically, it's not true. It was Greek. The Greeks in about the 17th century. You'll see a lot of blokes stood tight underpants on, fists out. You know, for me, forget Madison Square Garden. At the home of British boxing is York Hall and Bethnal Green. But yeah, I understand why people say, you know, the Lord Max, the Queensberry rules, and you know, it's a very gentlemanly sport. It's like the British Army. They're only aggressive on the battlefield. Outside of the ring, you're supposed to put yourself across and be gentlemanly at all times. And that's what the Lord Marcus of Queensberry rules is about. It's about 12 rounds, 3-minute rounds, 36. You know, back in the days it was 15 rounds. But yeah, boxing, I'm just fell out of love with it. I don't even have a mistress at the minute. I'm just utterly, what's the word? I'm looking elsewhere. You know, I'm more into my football than I ever was. I can watch snooker. My second cousin is Graham Dott, world champion. That's actually a true story. I've never met him, but he's my dad's cousin in Scotland. But yeah, boxing. I don't know. I can't think of a fight. Obviously, Usyk Fury in December, and we're in July now. Technically, the boxing season's just finishing. It's more of a Britain, really. Obviously, America will keep going. There usually isn't any British boxing in August, and then it's back on September. But there's no domestics. There's no. As I said, Wardley Fraser Clark was quite a spectacle. Joe Joyce, Daniel Tobias a couple of years back. Joe Joyce, Chisora will be half decent to watch. Although Chisora probably should have retired a couple of years back. But let me know your thoughts. British boxing, what are your thoughts on it? I'm very confident in saying I'm really, really not talking crap. I usually do. But yeah, I'm quite stick to my guns on this one. And I've been such a devout follower for the last, I don't know, since I was about 10. Since I discovered Eubank talking about how he was going to beat Nigel Benn on Satan Greavesy because I was a football, you know what I mean? It's like, and I've just been obsessed with boxing. It's been a big part of me and who I'm about, and buying the Boxing News weekly. I can't even remember the last time I bought a Boxing News. Just disillusioned with it all, truly and honestly. And but anyway, let us know your thoughts.